Hey everyone! Welcome back to my channel where I dive deep into movies that deserve your attention, whether they're classics or hidden gems. Today, I'm super excited to talk about a film that's got all the thrills, the action, and that timeless story of fighting for what's right, the 2018 version of Robin Hood. Now, I know there have been tons of Robin Hood movies over the years, but this one, it's got a fresh, modern edge that makes it stand out. And I'm here to tell you exactly why you should grab some popcorn, settle in, and give it a watch. Trust me, if you're into high-stakes adventures, charismatic heroes, and a dash of rebellion against the powerful, this is going to hook you from the first arrow shot. I'll walk you through everything, from the incredible cast and crew to the behind-the-scenes magic, without giving away any plot twists or surprises, because I want you to experience it fresh. Let's jump right in and explore what makes this movie a must-see. First off, let's set the stage with the legend itself. Robin Hood has been a folk hero for centuries, stealing from the rich to give to the poor, outsmarting the Sheriff of Nottingham, and leading his band of merry men through Sherwood Forest. Stories about him date back to medieval ballads, and he's inspired countless books, plays, and films. But this 2018 take? It's directed by Otto Bathurst, a guy who's no stranger to bringing epic tales to life. Otto made his mark in television with shows like Peaky Blinders, where he directed some of the most intense episodes, and Black Mirror, tackling that mind-bending national anthem episode. He even worked on Criminal Justice and his Dark Materials. For Robin Hood, this was his feature film directorial debut, and he brings a gritty, fast-paced style that's perfect for reimagining a classic. He wanted to make it feel contemporary, like a heist movie mixed with superhero origins, drawing inspiration from modern action flicks while staying true to the Robin Hood spirit. If you've seen his TV work, you know he excels at building tension and delivering visually stunning sequences, and that's exactly what he does here. The screenplay comes from Ben Chandler and David James Kelly, two writers who crafted a story that's all about a war-hardened crusader teaming up with a Moorish commander to launch an audacious revolt against a corrupt English crown. Ben Chandler has credits on projects like the video game adaptation of Mad Max, so he knows how to amp up the action and world-building. David James Kelly, on the other hand, worked on Logan, that gritty Wolverine film, bringing a sense of raw heroism and moral complexity. Together, they weave a narrative that's packed with themes of justice, inequality, and standing up to tyranny, stuff that feels incredibly relevant today. Without spoiling anything, it's a story that explores how ordinary people can become legends through courage and cleverness, and it's designed to keep you on the edge of your seat with its blend of heart-pounding action and clever schemes. Now, let's talk about the powerhouse behind the production. This film was produced by Jennifer Davison and none other than Leonardo DiCaprio through his company Appian Way Productions. Yeah, that's right. Leo DiCaprio, the Oscar-winning actor from Titanic, Inception, and The Revenant, stepped in as a producer here. He's got a track record of backing films with strong environmental and social messages, like Before the Flood and the 11th Hour documentaries. But he also loves epic stories, as seen in his work on The Departed and Shutter Island. Interestingly, there were early rumors that DiCaprio might star as Robin Hood himself, but he chose to stay behind the camera, focusing on bringing this vision to life. The production also involved Safe House Pictures, Thunder Road Pictures, and Summit Entertainment, with Lionsgate handling distribution. These companies have been behind hits like John Wick and the Twilight series, so they know how to deliver spectacle. Filming this movie was no small feat. It took place across stunning locations in Hungary, Croatia, and France to capture that medieval yet vibrant atmosphere. Principal photography started in February 2017 and wrapped up in May 2017, but not without some adjustments. For instance, the director was so set on having the lead actor that he delayed shooting to accommodate his schedule. The team built massive sets, including a detailed recreation of Nottingham, complete with bustling markets and imposing castles. They used practical effects wherever possible to make the action feel real and immersive. And get this, the movie was originally titled Robin Hood Origins, hinting at its focus on how the legend begins, but they dropped the subtitle to keep it simple and punchy. Budget-wise, this was a big undertaking, clocking in at around $100 million. That's the kind of investment that allows for top-tier visual effects, elaborate costumes, and high-octane stunts. Unfortunately, at the box office, it grossed about $86 million worldwide. $30.8 million in the United States and Canada, and another $55.2 million from international markets. It opened on November 21, 2018, right around Thanksgiving, but faced stiff competition from other blockbusters like Ralph Breaks the Internet and Creed 2. Critics gave it mixed to negative reviews, with a 14% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on over 200 reviews and an average score of 3.9 out of 10. Many pointed out its anachronistic elements, like modern dialogue and fashion in a historical setting, as a bold choice that didn't always land. The audience score is a bit higher at 39%, with some folks appreciating the fun, escapist vibe. Metacritic gave it a 32 out of 100 from 29 critics, calling it generally unfavorable. But hey, box office and reviews aren't everything. Plenty of films like this find a second life on streaming, and I think it's underrated for its sheer entertainment value. Speaking of entertainment, the cast is absolutely stacked, and they're a huge reason to watch. Leading the charge is Taron Egerton as Robin of Locksley, who becomes the iconic Robin Hood. Taron burst onto the scene with Kingsman, The Secret Service, where he played the street-smart Eggsy and followed it up with Eddie the Eagle, showing his range in heartfelt dramas. He's also the voice of Johnny and Sing and played Elton John in Rocketman, earning a Golden Globe for that. For Robin Hood, Taron underwent intense training in archery and parkour to do most of his own stunts, making his performance feel authentic and dynamic. He's got this charming, roguish energy that makes you root for him every step of the way. Opposite him is Jamie Foxx as Yahya, who goes by John, a fresh twist on the classic Little John character. Jamie suggested changing the name from the original script's Little John to something more culturally fitting, and it adds depth. Foxx is a legend, Oscar winner for Ray, where he portrayed Ray Charles, and he's shown in everything from Django Unchained to Collateral and Baby Driver. His chemistry with Taron is electric, bringing a mentor-student dynamic that's both intense and humorous. Fun fact, Jamie improvised some lines to make his character feel more real, drawing from his own experiences. Then there's Ben Mendelsohn as the Sheriff of Nottingham, the ultimate villain you love to hate. Ben's mastered playing antagonists. Think Rogue One's Orson Krennic or Captain Marvel's Talos. He's Australian, with roots in theater, and brings a sly, menacing presence here. His performance is all about that cold ambition, making the conflict feel personal and high stakes. Eve Hewson plays Marion, and she's fantastic in redefining the role as a strong, independent force. Daughter of U2's Bono, Eve started in films like This Must Be the Place and Bridge of Spies, and she's since starred in Behind Her Eyes on Netflix. Her portrayal adds layers of intelligence and passion, making Marion more than just a love interest. She's a key player in the rebellion. Jamie Dornan is Will Scarlet, bringing his brooding intensity from 50 Shades of Grey and The Fall. He's Irish, with modeling roots, and here he captures the complexity of loyalty and conflict beautifully. Tim Minchin as Friar Tuck is a stroke of genius. Tim's an Australian comedian, musician, and actor known for Matilda the Musical and his stand-up. He infuses Tuck with wit and heart, making him a standout in the ensemble. Paul Anderson plays Guy of Gisborne, channeling that tough guy vibe from Peaky Blinders' Arthur Shelby. He's British, with a background in theater, and adds real menace. F. Murray Abraham as the Cardinal. Oh man, this guy's a veteran. Oscar winner for Amadeus. He's been in the Grand Budapest Hotel and Homeland. His gravitas elevates every scene. Supporting roles include Ian Peck as the Archdeacon, Cornelius Booth as Lord Pembroke, and a host of others like Josh Herdman, Scott Greenan, Nicholas Whitman, Yasin Atur, Jeremy Vigoro, Declan Hannigan, and Katrina Temple in various parts that flesh out the world. Even smaller characters, like the Baron's Guard played by Antonio Lujac or the Crossman Norton portrayed by Nick Whitfield, contribute to the rich tapestry. Behind the camera, the cinematography by George Steele is breathtaking. George worked on Peaky Blinders too, so he knows how to capture gritty atmospheric shots. Here, he uses dynamic camera work, sweeping landscapes, intense close-ups during action, to make the film feel alive and modern. The editing by Chris Barwell keeps the pace brisk, clocking in at 116 minutes that fly by. The score by Joseph Trapanese is epic, blending orchestral swells with electronic elements for a contemporary feel. Joseph's composed for films like The Raid, Redemption, and Oblivion, and his music here amps up the heroism and tension without overpowering the story. Costume design by Julian Day is another highlight. Think leather armor with a streetwear twist, making the characters look cool and functional. Julian's worked on Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocketman, so he knows how to blend periods with flair. Production design by Jean-Vincent Puzzos recreates medieval England with a stylized edge, using sets in Dubrovnik, Croatia for that ancient city vibe, and Lorenzi, France for forest scenes. Visual effects by DNEG handle the big action moments seamlessly, from arrow volleys to chases. Now, let's sprinkle in some trivia that makes this film even more fascinating. Did you know that Taron Egerton was the director's first choice for Robin, and they pushed back filming from September 2015 to fit his Kingsman sequel schedule? Or that Jamie Foxx not only changed his character's name, but also brought in real archery experts for authenticity? The movie features over 100 horses in stunt sequences, and the cast trained extensively in combat to make fights look realistic. There's even a nod to modern politics in the themes of wealth disparity and corruption, which the writers intentionally wove in. Despite the box office stumble, it found fans who love its unapologetic fun. Some call it a guilty pleasure, like The Mummy or National Treasure. Thematically, this Robin Hood dives into ideas of heroism in dark times, the power of alliances across cultures, and questioning authority. It's got heart, humor, and heart-racing set pieces that make it perfect for a movie night. The anachronisms? They're intentional, giving it a punk rock vibe that sets it apart from stuffier historical epics. If you enjoyed films like Guy Ritchie's King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, or the Sherlock Holmes movies, this will scratch that itch. So, why should you watch Robin Hood 2018? Because in a world full of reboots, this one dares to be different. It's bold, it's energetic, and it's got a cast that pours their all into it. Sure, it didn't set the box office on fire, but that's often the case with films that take risks. It's streaming on platforms like Netflix in some regions, or available on Blu-ray with extras like deleted scenes and making-of featurettes that dive deeper into the stunts and designs. The home video release includes commentary from the director, giving insights into his vision. Imagine kicking back and watching arrows fly in slow-motion glory, heroes bantering with sharp wit, and a story that reminds you why underdogs always win our hearts. This movie isn't just entertainment. It's a reminder that legends evolve, and this version keeps the spirit alive while adding fresh fire. Whether you're a history buff, an action junkie, or just someone who loves a good tale of justice, Robin Hood 2018 has something for you. Let me tell you more about the development process. It all started back in 2015 when Summit Entertainment acquired the script spec from Joby Harold, who also executive produced. Joby has credits on King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, and Army of the Dead, so he's got that epic fantasy action down. The project went through a few directors before landing on Otto Bathurst, who was announced in 2016. Casting was a big deal. Taron was cast in March 2017, Jamie Foxx in February, Ben Mendelsohn in April, and so on. Eve Hewson joined in March, Jamie Dornan in April, Tim Minchin in May. They even had to recast some roles midway, but it all came together. On the technical side, the sound design by Steve Single and the makeup by Jan Sewell make the world immersive, from the clank of armor to the rugged looks of the Outlaws. The film's rated PG-13 for extended sequences of violence and action, suggestive references, and brief, strong language, making it suitable for teens and up. Critics like Roger Ebert's site gave it 2 stars, praising the cast but critiquing the script's modernity. Variety called it a medieval romp that's weirdly modern, while The Guardian said it's a chaotic car crash of a movie. But outlets like IGN gave it a 6 out of 10, noting the fun action. Audience reactions vary. Some love the fast pace, others wanted more traditional elements. It's got a 5.3 on IMDb from over 78,000 ratings, showing it's divisive but engaging. Trivia alert: the archery scenes used real arrows for close-ups, and Taron hit bullseyes after months of practice. Jamie Foxx drew from historical Moorish figures for his role, adding authenticity. The film's premiere was at the Toronto International Film Festival? Wait, no. Actually, it didn't have a major festival bow. It went straight to theatrical release. But Lionsgate promoted it heavily with trailers emphasizing the action. Expanding on the music, Joseph Trapanese collaborated with artists for the soundtrack, including songs like The Devil You Know by Ex-Ambassadors, which captures the rebellious tone. The score mixes strings, percussion, and synths for a hybrid sound that's thrilling during chases. Costumes included over 500 pieces, with Robin's hood being a practical design for stealth. The props team crafted custom bows and swords, some inspired by historical artifacts but stylized. Filming challenges. Weather in Croatia delayed some outdoor shoots, and the cast dealt with intense physical demands. Jamie Dornan even joked about the cardio involved. Post-production happened in London, with reshoots in 2018 to polish action scenes. Why it flopped. Analysts point to oversaturated market for medieval films, poor marketing that didn't highlight uniqueness, and release timing against family hits. But losses were estimated at 83 to 100 million for Lionsgate, making it 2018's biggest bomb alongside A Wrinkle in Time and The Nutcracker. Yet I argue it's worth revisiting. In today's streaming era, films like this gain cult followings. Fans praise the diversity in casting, Yahya as a Moorish character adds cultural depth, and the empowerment of female roles. Let's chat about the visual style more. George Steele used Arri Alexa cameras for crisp 4K imagery, with a color palette of earthy tones punched up by vibrant accents. Lighting design highlights shadows for stealth scenes, creating suspense. Editing trivia. Chris Barwell cut over 200 hours of footage down to 116 minutes, focusing on rhythm to balance action with character moments. The film's legacy? It joins a long line of Robin Hoods, from Errol Flynn's 1938 classic to Kevin Costner's 1991 hit, Ridley Scott's 2010 version with Russell Crowe, and animated ones like Disney's 1973 Foxx Tale. This 2018 entry stands out for its youthfulness and pace, appealing to younger audiences. If you're new here, pull up a chair. Because today we're diving deep into one of those movies that flies under the radar but packs a serious punch when you give it a chance. I'm talking about the 2018 Robin Hood, the one starring Taron Egerton and Jamie Foxx. Look, I get it. There have been dozens of Robin Hood films over the decades, from the classic Errol Flynn swashbuckler to Kevin Costner's 1991 take, and even Russell Crowe's grittier 2010 version. But this 2018 edition? It's different. It's bold, it's fast, it's got this modern rebellious energy that feels like a heist movie crossed with a superhero origin story set in medieval times. If you're someone who loves high-energy action, charismatic leads who bounce off each other perfectly, and a story that taps into themes of fighting corruption and inequality without feeling preachy, then stick around. I'm going to walk you through every single detail. The cast, the crew, the production secrets, the challenges they faced, the trivia that makes it fascinating, all without spoiling a single plot point or surprise. This is your spoiler-free guide to why this movie deserves a spot on your watch list. Let's get into it, nice and slow so you can soak it all up. Picture this. A young, wealthy noble named Robin of Locksley gets pulled into the brutal reality of the Crusades. He comes back changed, teams up with an unlikely ally from across cultures, and decides to take on a corrupt system that's crushing the people. That's the heart of it. Justice, loyalty, clever rebellion, but wrapped in explosive set pieces that keep your adrenaline pumping. Director Otto Bathurst brings his signature style from TV powerhouses like Peaky Blinders, where he directed episodes that had everyone talking about the tension, the visuals, and the raw edge. This was his big screen debut, and he approached Robin Hood with a clear vision: make it feel urgent and contemporary while honoring the legend's core. He talked in interviews about wanting to reimagine the hero not as a mythical figure, but as someone who starts ordinary and rises through grit and smarts. He drew from modern action films, even superhero origins, to give it that fresh kick. Bathurst delayed shooting to lock in his lead actor, showing how committed he was to getting the right chemistry on screen. The script started with Joby Harold, a writer known for high-concept action like King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, and Army of the Dead. He penned the original story, which then got polished by Ben Chandler, who worked on Mad Max video game adaptations, and David James Kelly, who contributed to Logan. Together they crafted something that's part origin tale, part uprising against tyranny, with themes that hit hard today: wealth gaps, war profiteering, standing up when the powerful abuse their position. It's not a dusty historical drama. It's energetic, with dialogue that snaps and action that feels innovative. Production kicked off under heavy hitters. Leonardo DiCaprio came on board as a producer through his Appian Way company. He was rumored early on to possibly star, but he stayed behind the scenes, backing the project because he saw the potential in its message about inequality and rebellion. And Jennifer Davison co-produced alongside him, and companies like Safe House Pictures, Thunder Road, and Summit Entertainment got involved, with Lionsgate distributing. This was a $100 million budget film, big money for elaborate sets, practical stunts, and visual effects that make the battles and chases pop. They built massive recreations of medieval Nottingham, complete with crowded streets, towering castles, and gritty markets. Filming spanned multiple countries. Principal photography ran from February to May 2017, mostly in Hungary for studio work, and vast landscapes, Croatia, especially around the stunning old city of Dubrovnik, which doubled for parts of Nottingham and provided those epic port and wall shots, and some in France for forest sequences. Dubrovnik's ancient walls and stone streets gave the film that authentic yet stylized medieval vibe without relying entirely on green screens. The sets were huge. PFI Studios in Serbia handled some of the castle and city interiors later on. They used practical locations wherever possible to ground the action. Real horses, over 100 in some sequences, real archery setups, real combat training. The stunts were intense. Parkour-style rooftop runs, carriage chases that feel like something out of a modern thriller, arrow volleys in slow motion. Taron Egerton trained hard in archery. He worked with experts like Danish YouTube sensation Lars Anderson, who's famous for his rapid-fire, real-life Legolas-style shooting. That technique shows up in the film, making Robin's bow work feel dynamic and almost superhuman. Jamie Foxx brought his own intensity, suggesting changes to make his character more authentic and culturally resonant. The whole cast went through combat boot camp to handle swords, staffs, and hand-to-hand fights realistically. Visually, it's striking. Cinematographer George Steele, who also shot Peaky Blinders episodes, used Arri Alexa cameras for sharp, immersive footage in a 2.35:1 scope aspect ratio. The color palette mixes earthy medieval tones with bold accents, shadows for tension, and dynamic lighting for stealth scenes. Editing by Chris Barwell keeps the 116-minute runtime flying, tight cuts during action, breathing room for character beats. Joseph Trapanese's score blends sweeping orchestral themes with electronic pulses, giving it a hybrid modern edge that amps up the heroism. He worked on films like Oblivion and The Greatest Showman, so he knows how to build epic soundscapes. Costumes by Julian Day mix leather armor with a street-smart twist, hoods that look tactical, fabrics that feel lived-in yet stylish. Day's done Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man, so he brings that flair for period with attitude designs. Production designer Jean-Vincent Pouzos created worlds that feel tangible, from bustling villages to imposing fortresses. Visual Effects house DNEG handled the bigger spectacles seamlessly. Now the cast. Oh man, this is where the movie shines brightest. Taron Egerton is Robin, bringing that roguish charm from Kingsman but layering in vulnerability and growth. He was the director's top choice. They pushed back the start date so he could finish Kingsman, The Golden Circle, first. Fun fact, Taron's terrified of horses, so he didn't ride one in a single scene. Stunt doubles and clever camera work handled all that. His physical prep was insane though. Archery, parkour, fight training, to make him believable as an agile outlaw. Jamie Foxx as Yahya, reimagined as the Moorish commander who becomes a mentor figure, is electric. He pushed for the name change to fit the character's background better, drawing from historical Moorish warriors. Jamie's performance mixes toughness, wisdom, and heart. His chemistry with Taron carries so much of the emotional weight. Ben Mendelsohn's Sheriff of Nottingham is chilling, cold, ambitious, manipulative. He's a master at villains, from Rogue One to Bloodline, and here he makes the corruption feel personal. Eve Hewson as Marion redefines the role. She's smart, fierce, proactive, not just waiting to be rescued. As Bono's daughter, she's got acting chops from Bridge of Spies and The Nick. Jamie Dornan as Will Scarlet brings brooding intensity from The Fall and 50 Shades. Tim Minchin as Friar Tuck adds humor and warmth. He's a comedian-musician who infuses the character with wit. Paul Anderson as Guy of Gisborne channels menace from Peaky Blinders. F. Murray Abraham as the Cardinal adds gravitas. He's an Oscar winner from Amadeus. Smaller roles rounded out beautifully. Ian Peck, Cornelius Booth, Josh Herdman, and more, all adding texture to the world. The film hit theaters November 21, 2018, smack in the middle of holiday competition. Ralph Breaks the Internet, Creed II, Fantastic Beasts. It opened to about $9 million domestically, ending with $30.8 million in the US/Canada and around $55 million internationally for a worldwide total of roughly $86 million. Against that $100 million budget, it was labeled a box office disappointment, with losses estimated high. Critics were tough, 14% on Rotten Tomatoes from over 200 reviews, averaging low scores, Metacritic at 32 out of 100. Many called out the anachronisms, modern slang, fashion vibes, fast-paced editing that felt more like a video game than a period piece. Some said it tried too hard to be edgy, but audiences were kinder in places, 39% on RT, and on IMDb it's a 5.3 from tens of thousands of votes. People who like it call it fun, underrated escapism, a guilty pleasure with killer action. Trivia Gold. The film was originally titled Robin Hood, Origins During Development, hinting at its focus on beginnings. Lars Anderson's archery coaching made those shots authentic and flashy. There are nods to other films, like a molten metal moment echoing Terminator 2. Jamie Foxx improvised lines for natural feel. The carriage chase used practical effects mixed with VFX for that high-speed thrill. Reshoots happened in 2018 to refine action. Marketing pushed the revolutionary angle, with trailers emphasizing revolt and romance. Why watch it anyway? Because it's unapologetically entertaining. In a sea of safe reboots, this one takes risks. Stylized visuals, diverse casting, Yahya's role adds cultural depth, empowered characters. It's got heart-pounding sequences, banter that lands, and a message about standing against injustice that resonates. If you dig Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes or King Arthur, or even fast-paced adventures like National Treasure, this scratches that itch. It's streaming in spots on Blu-ray with extras like making-of docs, deleted scenes, and director commentary that reveal the passion behind it. Picking right back up where we left off, because there's still so much more to unpack about this 2018 Robin Hood that makes it worth your time. We've covered the big picture, the bold reimagining, the stacked cast led by Taron Egerton and Jamie Foxx, the $100 million budget that went into those massive sets and explosive action, the mixed reception that saw it gross about $86 million worldwide, with $30.8 million domestic and the rest international, and how it landed in theaters on November 21, 2018, right in the thick of holiday competition. Critics were harsh, calling out the deliberate anachronisms like modern-feeling dialogue, streetwear-inspired armor, and fight choreography that feels more like a video game or John Wick in tights. But that's exactly what the director intended. Otto Bathurst wanted this to feel urgent and relevant, like a story ripped from today's headlines about power imbalances and rebellion, not some stuffy period piece. And honestly, that choice gives it a unique energy that sets it apart from every other Robin Hood out there. Let's dive deeper into the behind-the-scenes magic, because the production stories are wild and show how much heart went into this despite the challenges. Filming kicked off on February 20, 2017, and wrapped by May 19th of the same year, a tight schedule for something this ambitious. They started in Dubrovnik, Croatia, using those incredible medieval walls and stone streets to stand in for Nottingham and other key spots. Dubrovnik's ancient architecture provided that epic, lived-in feel without needing tons of CGI for every background. Then they moved to Laurency in eastern Paris, France, shooting interiors at the stunning Église Notre-Dame de Rancy for some of the more atmospheric scenes. A lot of the principal studio work happened in Budapest, Hungary. But here's a crazy detail. A fire broke out at the Budapest facilities during production, forcing the team to relocate the remaining studio shoots to the Cité du Cinéma complex just north of Paris. Talk about chaos. Losing your main soundstages mid-shoot is a nightmare, but they powered through and kept the momentum going. The action sequences demanded insane prep from the cast. Taron Egerton, as Robin, trained extensively in archery under Lars Anderson, this Danish YouTube sensation nicknamed the real-life Legolas. Lars is famous for videos showing insane feats, like shooting arrows at incoming arrows mid-flight or firing multiple shots while jumping. He taught Taron an ancient technique where you draw the bow without crossing the arrow over it, allowing for super-fast shooting. Think 2 arrows a second or more. Taron got so good that a lot of his bow work is practical, not just CGI. He did his own stunts where possible, incorporating parkour-style moves for those rooftop chases and leaps that make Robin feel agile and unstoppable. But here's a fun personal tidbit. Taron is actually terrified of horses. Like, genuinely scared, so he didn't ride a single horse in any scene. Stunt doubles and smart camera angles handled all the horseback stuff, keeping him safe and focused on the archery and fights. Jamie Foxx went through similar rigorous training for his role as Yahya, the reimagined Little John. He learned close-quarters combat, staff fighting, and even how to bat away arrows with a thin stick in one mind-blowing moment. The whole cast did combat boot camp to make the battles feel raw and real, swords clashing, hand-to-hand brawls, everything grounded in physicality. Jamie brought his own ideas to the table, pushing for cultural authenticity in his character's background as a Moorish commander, and he improvised lines to add natural rhythm and humor to the mentor dynamic with Taron. Their chemistry is one of the film's strongest elements, banter that feels lived in, trust built through shared hardship, and that classic buddy hero vibe that carries you through the heavier themes. Otto Bathurst has talked openly about why he took on this project. In interviews, he said he was initially hesitant. Why another Robin Hood when there are so many classics? But digging into the legend, he saw how relevant it is right now. A story of ordinary people rising against corrupt power, wealth hoarded at the top while the rest suffer, and the idea that you don't need superpowers or an iron suit to make a difference. Just courage, allies, and cleverness. He described it as an origin story, showing how a privileged guy like Robin becomes the legend through trauma, realization, and action. Bathurst brought his TV-honed skills from Peaky Blinders and Black Mirror, building tension, stylish visuals, quick cuts, to make the film feel cinematic and modern. He even delayed production to secure Taron, proving his commitment to the right lead. The visual effects team at DNEG handled the bigger spectacles, like massive arrow barrages and high-speed chases, blending them seamlessly with practical work. The carriage pursuit, for instance, mixes real vehicles, well, period-appropriate carts, with VFX enhancements for that thrilling speed. There's even a molten metal moment in one sequence that nods to Terminator 2. Intentional homage or not, it adds to the over-the-top fun. Costumes leaned into that stylized edge, leather pieces with tactical vibes, hoods that look stealthy yet cool, fabrics that move dynamically in fights. Production designer Jean-Vincent Pouzos and his team recreated bustling markets, dark mines, and grand halls that feel oppressive yet detailed. On the home video side, the Blu-ray and digital releases include some solid extras. There's a making-of featurette showing the archery training with Lars Anderson, behind-the-scenes looks at the stunts, interviews with the cast and crew, and probably some deleted scenes or alternate takes, though no full director's cut ever surfaced with major changes. Rumors floated about extended material, but the final release kept it focused on the theatrical version with commentary and breakdowns that reveal Otto's vision. The soundtrack features Joseph Trapanese's hybrid score, big orchestral swells mixed with electronic beats, plus licensed tracks that amp up the rebellious feel. Trivia keeps coming. Nicholas Hoult, Jack Hewson, and Dylan O'Brien auditioned for Robin before Taron locked it in. Gugu Mbatha Raw was considered for Marion early on. The film deliberately went anachronistic, modern slang rhythms, battle styles inspired by contemporary action to make it accessible and punchy. Some call it a medieval John Wick for Robin's bowfighting flair. Despite the box office label as one of 2018's bigger disappointments, though not the absolute worst, others like Mortal Engines lost more. It has found fans who appreciate the risks. Diverse casting, strong female agency in Marion's role, cross-cultural alliances, and unapologetic spectacle. Critics like those on Roger Ebert's site praised the cast's effort, but felt the script and style clashed. Variety noted the weird modernity. But in places like Google Talks panels or red carpet chats, the actors and director expressed genuine passion, Jamie Foxx calling it a fresh take, Taron highlighting the physical challenge, Otto emphasizing the timeless message. Taron later reflected in interviews that the final film diverged from the original script in some ways, hinting at studio influences or reshoots to polish the action. At the end of the day, this Robin Hood is a roller coaster. Flawed, yes, but thrilling, visually bold, and packed with charisma. It's got those heart-pounding set pieces where arrows fly in slow-mo, heroes team up against impossible odds, and the underdog spirit shines through. If you're in the mood for something that doesn't play it safe, something that mixes medieval legend with modern swagger, pop it on. You might laugh at the wild choices, cheer the fights, and walk away thinking about why stories like this still matter. We're not done yet. There's even more to explore with this 2018 Robin Hood, because honestly, once you start peeling back the layers, you realize how much thought and effort went into reinventing a legend that's been told 100 times. We've talked about the high-octane action, the stellar cast chemistry, the behind-the-scenes hurdles like that studio fire in Budapest that forced a last-minute move to Paris, and how the film's deliberate mix of medieval grit with modern flair divided critics but won over fans looking for something fresh. Now, let's zoom in on some of the thematic depths and cultural impacts that make this version stand out, plus a few more production nuggets and cast insights that show why it's more than just another blockbuster attempt. It's a passionate swing at updating folklore for today's world. Remember, no spoilers here. I'm just arming you with all the reasons to hit play and see for yourself why this Robin Hood could become your new guilty pleasure. One of the coolest things about this film is how it weaves in contemporary resonances without beating you over the head with them. The writers, Ben Chandler, David James Kelly, and original story creator Joby Harold drew from real-world issues like economic disparity, the aftermath of endless wars, and how corruption at the top trickles down to crush everyday folks. It's set in the Crusades era, but the way Robin and his allies challenge the system feels like it could be commenting on any era's power struggles. Otto Bathurst has said in press tours that he wanted viewers to draw parallels to modern politics and social movements, emphasizing that Robin Hood isn't just a thief. He's a symbol of resistance through intelligence and community. That multicultural alliance between Robin and Yahya adds a layer of timely commentary on bridging divides, something Jamie Foxx highlighted in interviews, noting how his character's Moorish roots bring historical accuracy. Moors were indeed part of medieval Europe's complex history, and a fresh perspective on mentorship and equality. Speaking of historical nods, the film doesn't stick strictly to facts, but it incorporates clever elements like the use of longbows in innovative ways, inspired by real medieval warfare tactics, but amped up for cinematic thrill. The archery isn't your standard pull and release. Thanks to Lars Anderson's training, it's rapid-fire, acrobatic stuff that makes Robin feel like a proto-superhero. Taron Egerton shared in a podcast that practicing those techniques was grueling. He spent hours a day for months building the muscle memory, and it paid off in scenes where the bow becomes an extension of his character's cunning. He even joked about how the physical demands helped him drop weight post-Kingsman, turning him into this lean, agile outlaw. And while Taron avoided horses due to his phobia, the equine stunts are impressive. Over 100 trained horses were used, with specialized riders performing gallops through forests and city streets that were filmed in the lush areas around Laurency, France, to capture that Sherwood Forest vibe without CGI overkill. Let's not forget the supporting players who add so much flavor. Tim Minchin as Friar Tuck brings a comedic edge that's grounded in his real-life skills as a musician and satirist. He even ad-libbed some quips that made it into the final cut, lightening the mood amid the intensity. Paul Anderson's Guy of Gisborne is all brooding menace, drawing from his Peaky Blinders experience to make the character a formidable enforcer. F. Murray. Abraham's Cardinal drips with authoritative slyness. As a veteran actor with roots in classical theater, he elevates the political intrigue. Eve Hewson talked about how she approached Marion as a co-conspirator, not a damsel, drawing inspiration from strong historical women who influenced events behind the scenes. Her Irish background and family ties to music, being Bono's daughter, gave her a unique take on the role's passion and resilience. Jamie Dornan as Will Scarlet layers in emotional depth, using his experience from dramatic series like The Fall to explore themes of loyalty and inner conflict. Production-wise, the $100 million budget shows in the details. Elaborate props like custom-forged swords and bows, makeup by Jan Sewell that gives characters rugged, battle-worn looks. Think scars, dirt, and practical aging, and sound design by Steve Single that makes every arrow, whistle, and sword clash immersive. The team faced weather woes in Croatia, rainy days delayed outdoor shoots, but turned it into an advantage, adding moody atmosphere to the scenes. Reshoots in early 2018 focused on tightening action beats, with Otto Bathurst overseeing tweaks to ensure the pacing kept viewers hooked for the full 116 minutes. The film's PG-13 rating comes from those extended violence sequences, some suggestive moments, and brief language, making it accessible but with enough edge for adults. On the marketing front, Lionsgate pushed hard with trailers that highlighted the revolutionary angle, steal from the rich, start a war, and posters showing Taron in that iconic hood, bow drawn. They released character featurettes online, like one on Jamie Foxx's training, to build hype. The soundtrack album dropped with Joseph Trapanese's cues, including standout tracks like the main theme that builds from tense strings to triumphant horns, mixed with electronic undertones for that hybrid feel. There's even an end credits song that ties into the rebellious spirit, though I won't name it to avoid any hints. Critically, outlets like The Hollywood Reporter called it a misguided attempt at modernization, while Entertainment Weekly gave it a C, praising the cast but critiquing the script's tonal shifts. But fan reactions on social media and forums often defend it as underrated fun. People love the diversity, the fast pace, and how it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's got that cult potential, like other box office underperformers that blow up on streaming. Speaking of which, by 2019, it was available on platforms like Netflix in various regions, where it gained a second wind among viewers who skipped theaters. More trivia. The script evolved from an earlier draft where the tone was darker, but they leaned into humor to balance the action. Ben Mendelsohn, ever the pro, suggested wardrobe tweaks for his sheriff to emphasize his vanity and power. The visual effects included subtle enhancements, like digital crowds in big scenes to amp up the scale without breaking immersion. And did you know the film references classic Robin Hood lore subtly, merry men elements, Sherwood hideouts, but twists them into something new? Ultimately, this Robin Hood is about evolution, taking a timeless tale and injecting it with energy that speaks to now. It's got flaws, sure. Some say the anachronisms jar. But that's what makes it bold. If you're tired of cookie-cutter epics, this one's a breath of fresh air with its heist-like schemes, crossbow chaos, and heroes who win with wits as much as weapons. So, whether you're watching alone or with friends, let it transport you to a world where justice has a sharp edge and a sly grin. Dive in, enjoy the ride, and remember, legends like this remind us that anyone can spark change. We're keeping the momentum going because there's genuinely so much more to love, or at least appreciate, about this 2018 Robin Hood that makes it a fascinating watch even years later. We've gone over the epic production moves, the cast's insane prep, the director's vision for a modern twist, the box office realities, and how it stirred up debate with its bold choices. Now, let's dig into even deeper layers. More on the archery wizardry that makes the action pop, some candid cast reflections, additional fun trivia that shows the passion behind the scenes, and why this film, despite its rough landing, has stuck around in conversations as an underrated gem for action lovers. All spoiler-free, of course. Just pure info to help you decide if it's the next movie you queue up. One of the standout elements that really elevates the spectacle is the archery itself. It's not your grandpa's slow-draw bow work. The team brought in Lars Andersen, this Danish archery expert who's blown up online as the real-life Legolas for his mind-bending videos of rapid-fire shooting, deflecting arrows, and insane accuracy while moving. Lars was hired specifically to train the cast, and he taught them an ancient, unconventional technique, holding the bow without crossing the arrow over it, allowing for lightning-fast releases, sometimes 2 or 3 arrows in under a second, hitting moving targets mid-jump or spin. Taron Egerton dove headfirst into this training for months, and in behind-the-scenes clips, you can see him progressing from basics to pulling off those cinematic feats practically. He even nailed firing at airborne targets while leaping around, which director Otto Bathurst called an inspired move to make Robin's style feel dynamic and superhero-like without actual superpowers. Jamie Foxx got in on it too, learning to bat away incoming arrows with a thin staff in one jaw-dropping sequence. Pure skill, minimal VFX trickery there. It's these practical elements that give the fights that raw, believable edge, making you feel every twang of the bowstring. Taron has been super open in interviews about the physical toll and rewards. He described the archery as very cinematic and fast-paced, crediting Lars for pushing him to levels he didn't think possible. But he also admitted the horse thing was a non-starter. His fear was so real that not a single horseback scene features him actually riding. Clever editing, doubles, and ground-based shots made it seamless. In one chat, he laughed about how the intense training helped him get in peak shape, but the set wasn't always smooth sailing. Taron later reflected candidly that the final film strayed from what he originally signed on for. Pitched as something different, it got shaped by committee in ways that left him frustrated on set at times. He called it absolutely not the movie I signed up to make. hinting at lost vision amid reshoots and changes. Yet he still praised the cast chemistry and the action's energy, showing that even with bumps, the heart was there. Jamie Foxx echoed that passion in his own way. He pushed hard for authenticity in Yahya's portrayal, drawing from historical Moorish influences in medieval Europe and improvising to add natural flow to the mentor dynamic. In talks at Google panels and press junkets, Jamie and Taron bantered about the grueling boot camp, combat drills, staff work, the whole deal, while Otto Bathurst chimed in on why he delayed shooting to lock in Taron. He knew the lead's charisma was key to selling this reimagined hero. Otto has been consistent in interviews that he skipped watching prior Robin Hoods to avoid influence, aiming for something completely and utterly different. He saw the legend's core, greed, corruption, the need for everyday heroes, as eternally relevant, especially in 2017 to 2018 when social divides felt raw. He wanted Robin as a flawed human guy who rises through alliances and smarts, not capes or iron suits. More fun nuggets from the Trivia Vault. Auditions for Robin included big names like Nicholas Hoult, Jack Hewson, and Dylan O'Brien before Taron won out. Gugu Mbatha Raw was in early talks for Marion. The molten metal sequence in one high-stakes moment nods to Terminator 2. Intentional or not, it's a cool Easter egg for action fans. The Moorish character twist builds on 80s TV like Robin of Sherwood, adding cultural depth that Jamie championed. Accents roam freely. Irish Eve Hewson as Marion, Australian Ben Mendelsohn as the sheriff, which fits the stylized vibe but raised eyebrows for purists. Mistakes spotted by eagle-eyed viewers include anachronisms like modern dog breeds in background shots, but that's part of the film's unapologetic approach. It's not a history lesson, it's a thrilling romp. Behind-the-scenes footage from featurettes and YouTube clips shows the camaraderie, cast goofing off between takes, Otto directing with intensity from his Peaky Blinders roots, and the sheer scale of sets in Dubrovnik's historic walls or the relocated Paris studios after that Budapest fire scare. The home releases pack in these extras: archery breakdowns with Lars, stunt rehearsals, cast interviews where they test each other's knowledge, hilarious outtakes, and director commentary that dives into his choices for pacing and visuals. If you grab the Blu-ray, those make the experience richer. Why does this version endure in discussions? Because it dared to modernize. John Wick-style bow combat, diverse casting, empowered supporting roles, themes of revolt that hit home. Critics slammed the tonal whiplash and medieval car crash feel, but fans who vibe with it call it escapist fun with killer set pieces and a message about standing up that never gets old. It's divisive, sure, but in a streaming world, that's often where cult favorites are born. So if you're craving an action-packed origin story with bow-twanging chaos, cross-cultural bonds, and a hero who earns his legend the hard way, give this Robin Hood a fair shot. It might not be perfect, but it's got spirit, spectacle, and enough heart to make the 2 hours fly. Pop some corn, dim the lights, and see what all the buzz and debate is about. We're rolling right along with this deep dive into the 2018 Robin Hood, because the more you learn about it, the clearer it becomes why this movie is such a polarizing yet endlessly discussable ride. We've covered the cast's killer performances, the wild production challenges like that Budapest fire forcing a relocation to Paris studios, the archery training that turned Taron Egerton into a rapid-fire sharpshooter, and Otto Bathurst's bold vision to yank the legend screaming into the 21st century with zero apologies for the anachronisms. Now, let's layer in even more from interviews, behind-the-scenes insights, and those juicy trivia bits that reveal the heart and the headaches of making this film. All still spoiler-free, just straight facts and stories to fuel your curiosity and maybe convince you this one's worth a fresh look. Otto Bathurst has been pretty vocal about his approach in press interviews around release time. He told outlets like The Hollywood Reporter and Yahoo Movies UK that he deliberately skipped watching any previous Robin Hood films. No Errol Flynn, no Kevin Costner, no Russell Crowe, to keep his version pure and uninfluenced. He wanted something completely and utterly different, dragging the story kicking and screaming into modern times. In one chat, he explained there was no historical accuracy at all on purpose. The film isn't a history lesson. It's a folktale reimagined as a gritty, relevant action-adventure. He leaned into anachronisms like modern-feeling dialogue rhythms, tactical leather outfits that echo streetwear or tactical gear, and battle choreography inspired by contemporary action flicks because he felt the core themes: corruption, inequality, fighting back against the powerful, were more alive than ever in our world. He described it as pulling Robin Hood out of quaint British fairy tale territory and making it feel urgent, alive, and unapologetically stylized, almost like a medieval Batman or John Wick origin with bows instead of guns. Taron Egerton and Jamie Foxx did a ton of joint interviews, talks at Google, CinemaCon panels, Sway in the Morning, AMC Theaters chats, where they geeked out over the physical demands and the fresh take. Taron talked about how the script initially hooked him with its exciting energy and the chance to play a hero who starts privileged but grows through real hardship. He praised the archery work under Lars Anderson, saying he could fire 3 arrows a second and hit moving targets midair after months of training, skills that shine in those dynamic fight scenes. Jamie Foxx shared how he advocated for cultural depth in his character's Moorish background, improvising to make the mentor-student bond feel authentic and layered. They both highlighted the massive sets in Dubrovnik and the practical stunts, with Jamie joking about the intensity of combat boot camp, while Taron admitted the horse phobia meant he never once mounted up. Doubles and smart shots handled every gallop. But Taron has been candid in later reflections, like a 2019 Variety interview about frustrations during production. He said the final cut wasn't the movie he signed up for. It got made by committee, lost some of its original vision through reshoots and changes, and left him unhappy on set at times. He described being pitched something different, with the tone shifting in ways that didn't fully land for him. Despite that creator backlash vibe, he still credits the cast chemistry and the action's thrill, showing even with bumps, the collaborative spirit was real. Jamie, on the other hand, stayed positive in his promo rounds, focusing on the fun of re-envisioning Little John as a wise, battle-hardened commander and the film's message about alliances across divides. Trivia keeps piling up in fascinating ways. The film was originally announced as Robin Hood, Origins during early production, emphasizing its focus on how the legend begins. Auditions for Robin included heavy hitters like Nicholas Hoult, Jack Hewson, and Dylan O'Brien before Taron locked it in. Otto pushed back the start date specifically so Taron could wrap Kingsman, the Golden Circle first, proving how committed he was to that casting. Gugu Mbatha-Raw was considered early for Marion. One fun visual nod. A molten metal sequence echoes Terminator 2's iconic scene. Maybe intentional homage, especially since Kevin Costner's 1991 Robin Hood and T2 were 1991 box office rivals. Lars Anderson's influence is everywhere. His ancient technique, no crossing the arrow over the bow, allows for that blistering speed you see on screen. The deliberate modernization extended to everything, costumes blending medieval leather with tactical, almost Matrix-like vibes, dialogue with contemporary snap, even weapons like rapid-fire crossbows behaving like assault rifles or grenade launchers. Some viewers spot wild inaccuracies, like steel beams in structures, Industrial Revolution stuff, roulette tables centuries too early, or modern dog breeds in backgrounds. But that's all part of the stylized alternate universe feel Bathurst aimed for. He wanted it to feel like a heightened reality, not a dusty reenactment. Behind-the-scenes featurettes and YouTube clips from Lionsgate show the camaraderie. Taron and Jamie bantering on set, Otto directing with that Peaky Blinders intensity, the cast testing bows and swords. The home video extras include breakdowns of Lars's archery sessions, stunt rehearsals, and cast Q&As where they share laughs about the physical grind. No major director's cut emerged, but those commentaries and deleted scene teases give glimpses into alternate takes. This Robin Hood endures because it took massive swings. Diverse casting, empowered Marion, cross-cultural themes, superhero-style origin beats, and even if it didn't all connect for everyone, it sparked real conversation. Critics called it a chaotic mess or misguided modernization, but fans who connect with the energy see it as bold escapism with killer set pieces and a timely underdog spirit. In a world of safe reboots, this one's unapologetic risks make it memorable. Let's keep this Robin Hood 2018 love letter rolling because, honestly, the deeper we go, the more there is to celebrate about what this movie tried to do, even if it didn't land perfectly for everybody. We've unpacked the archery wizardry courtesy of Lars Anderson, Taron Egerton's honest reflections on how the final cut drifted from his original vision, Jamie Foxx's push for cultural authenticity in his role, Otto Bathurst's decision to ignore every previous Robin Hood movie on purpose, and all those glorious anachronisms that make it feel like a medieval action comic come to life. Now, let's zoom in on a few more production gems, some overlooked strengths, cast career context around 2018, and why this film quietly lives on as a what-if favorite for a certain kind of movie fan. Still zero spoilers, just more fuel for why you should give it a spin if you haven't already, or revisit it with fresh eyes. One thing that doesn't get talked about enough is how this version treats Robin Hood as an explicit origin story in the superhero mold. Otto Bathurst has compared it openly to Batman Begins, or even Iron Man. In interviews, he wanted to show the before the legend phase, the trauma, the awakening, the first clumsy steps toward becoming the icon. That's why the early scenes feel so grounded in personal loss and disillusionment, and why the team-up with Yahya becomes the emotional engine. It's less about merry men singing in the forest, and more about two outsiders forging a brotherhood that challenges an entire rotten system. That choice gives the film a coming-of-age arc wrapped inside heist-level planning and large-scale rebellion, which is a pretty ambitious swing for a folktale reboot. The diversity angle is another strength that holds up really well in hindsight. Yahya isn't just the sidekick. He's the tactical genius, the moral compass, the one who teaches Robin how to fight smarter, not harder. Jamie Foxx has said he loved that the character draws from real historical presence of Moors in medieval Europe, traders, soldiers, scholars who crossed paths with Christian kingdoms during the Crusades, and he worked to make sure the portrayal felt respectful and powerful rather than tokenistic. Eve Hewson's Marion is equally elevated. She's not waiting in a tower. She's scheming, organizing, holding her own in dangerous rooms full of powerful men. That agency for female characters was intentional, and it gives the story a more modern feminist undercurrent without feeling forced. Let's talk scale for a second. That $100 million budget wasn't just thrown at CGI explosions, though DNEG did beautiful work on the big arrow storms and chase sequences. A huge chunk went into practical builds. The sprawling Nottingham city set with its layered streets, market stalls, towering castle walls, and underground tunnels. When you see Robin leaping across rooftops or fighting through crowded bazaars, a lot of that geometry is real, built on sound stages in Hungary and enhanced with location work in Dubrovnik. The Croatian coastal city provided those dramatic seawall and fortress shots that give the film a sun-baked, lived-in Mediterranean flavor rather than the usual misty English woodland look. Even the forest sequences in France around Laurency used real ancient trees and winding paths to ground the outlaw hideout vibes. Sound design and music deserve a shout-out too. Yeah, Joseph Trapanese's score is this brilliant mashup. Traditional orchestral heroism meets pulsing electronic undercurrents and tribal percussion that nods to Yahya's background. It builds tension like a thriller and erupts into triumphant swells during the set pieces. The mix makes every bowstring snap, every sword clang, every hoofbeat feel visceral. Steve Single's sound team layered in authentic medieval weapon noises, but punched them up with modern action movie weight so the fights hit hard. By 2018 standards, the marketing campaign was aggressive, but maybe misjudged. Lionsgate dropped teaser trailers focusing on the revolution angle. Take back what's yours, with pounding music and quick-cut arrows. They leaned hard into the not your father's Robin Hood messaging, which excited some audiences but turned off others expecting a more traditional take. Character posters showed Taron hooded and intense, Jamie Foxx gripping a staff, Ben Mendelsohn sneering in his fur-lined robes. Classic villain energy. The red carpet premieres had the cast in sharp modern suits rather than medieval cosplay, reinforcing the contemporary vibe. Post-release life has been interesting. It bombed hard enough that Lionsgate took a write-down, but it found a steady streaming audience. People who discover it on Netflix, Prime, or cable reruns often say the same thing. I went in expecting to hate it, but the action is actually really fun. The fast pace, 116 minutes flies by, the banter between Taron and Jamie, the sheer spectacle of those archery barrages, those elements hold up even if the script's tonal shifts feel jarring on first watch. It's become a bit of a so-bad-it's-good cult pick for some, while others genuinely defend it as underrated for taking big swings in an era of safe IP recycling. More tiny trivia nuggets. The crossbow volleys in one sequence were choreographed to mimic modern suppressive fire, rapid, covering shots that force enemies to duck. Ben Mendelsohn improvised some of the sheriff's cruel one-liners to make him more hissable. Tim Minchin brought his musical comedy brain to Friar Tuck, slipping in subtle rhythmic delivery that makes the character warmer and funnier. F. Murray Abraham recorded his cardinal scenes in just a couple of days, but brought decades of gravitas that make every line land heavier. If you're the type who enjoys movies that blend genres, part historical fantasy, part heist thriller, part buddy action, part social commentary, this one scratches an itch that few others do. It's messy, yes. It's over the top, absolutely. But it's also energetic, visually inventive, and carried by actors who clearly gave a damn even when the production got bumpy. So here's the pitch one more time. Next time you're scrolling for something to watch, throw on Robin Hood 2018. Turn off the historical accuracy filter, embrace the stylized chaos, and let the arrows fly. You might walk away surprised at how much you enjoyed the ride, or at least how much you appreciated the ambition. We're still not quite done peeling back the layers on this 2018 Robin Hood, because every time you think you've hit the bottom of what makes it tick, another interesting detail or perspective pops up that adds even more flavor to why this movie is so worth talking about, even 7 or 8 years later. We've already gone through the archery revolution sparked by Lars Anderson's insane techniques that let Taron Egerton loose rapid volleys like he's channeling some kind of medieval gunslinger. The honest behind-the-scenes tension Taron felt when the film morphed through reshoots and studio notes into something different from what he originally boarded, Jamie Foxx's thoughtful advocacy to make Yahya a fully realized cultural force rather than a side note, Otto Bathurst's conscious choice to treat every prior Robin Hood adaptation like it didn't exist, so he could build something raw and unburdened by nostalgia, and the sheer stylistic gamble of turning a folk legend into this hyper-stylized, anachronism-embracing action spectacle that feels equal parts Guy Ritchie swagger and early 2000s comic book energy. Now let's lean into some of the quieter strengths that often get lost in the noise of the bigger criticisms. The way the film quietly builds a sense of camaraderie among its outlaws, the subtle world-building in the background details of Nottingham's underclass, and how certain visual and thematic choices give it a lingering texture that rewards a second or third viewing more than most people expect. Think about the atmosphere the production team created around the downtrodden parts of the city. Those dimly lit, overcrowded streets where ordinary people scrape by under the sheriff's iron grip aren't just set dressing. They're alive with small, lived-in touches like laundry strung between ramshackle buildings, children darting through alleys, merchants haggling under watchful guards, and the constant low hum of resentment that you can almost feel rising from the cobblestones. Jean-Vincent Puzo's and his design crew didn't skimp on making the lower classes feel real and oppressed, which makes the eventual shift toward rebellion carry real emotional weight. When Robin starts to see the cost of the crown's greed up close, not through grand speeches but through quiet moments of witnessing hunger, fear, and quiet defiance, it grounds the larger-than-life action in something human and relatable. That contrast between the opulent castle feasts upstairs and the desperate survival downstairs is one of the film's most effective tools for selling its central message about inequality without ever needing to spell it out in on-the-nose dialogue. It's a visual storytelling choice that quietly elevates the whole thing, even if the louder set pieces steal most of the spotlight. The Outlaw crew itself, beyond the big names, has this understated but effective found family vibe that sneaks up on you. Tim Minchin's Friar Tuck isn't just comic relief. He brings a wry, almost philosophical warmth that makes the group feel like they've known each other longer than the runtime suggests. Paul Anderson's Guy of Gisborne, on the villain side, isn't cartoonishly evil. He's a man who's climbed the ladder by being ruthless and loyal to the wrong cause, and you can sense the warped sense of honor underneath his menace. Even smaller roles, like the various guards, villagers, and minor nobles, are cast with faces that feel specific and grounded rather than generic extras. That attention to texture in the ensemble helps sell the idea that this isn't just Robin versus the sheriff. It's a growing movement of people from different walks deciding they've had enough. The banter flows naturally in those quieter hideout scenes, the kind of easy ribbing and mutual respect that makes you believe these people would actually risk everything for each other. It's not loud or showy, but it's there, and it gives the high-stakes action sequences a stronger emotional anchor than a lot of critics gave the film credit for at the time. Another thing that holds up surprisingly well is how the movie uses color and lighting to tell its own parallel story. George Steele's cinematography shifts palettes deliberately. The early Crusades sequences are harsh, sun-bleached, dusty yellows and oranges that feel oppressive and alien, while England starts in cooler, muted grays and browns that reflect the gloom of occupation and poverty. As the rebellion gains momentum, you start seeing pops of richer color, deep greens in the forest, torchlight oranges during night raids, even subtle reds in Marion's wardrobe that signal passion and danger. It's not revolutionary filmmaking, but it's thoughtful and consistent, and it gives the movie a visual identity that's distinct from the usual muddy medieval look. When combined with Joseph Trapanese's score, which knows exactly when to pull back to let silence and ambient sound do the heavy lifting versus when to unleash those big hybrid orchestral electronic swells, the whole package feels more cohesive on repeat watches than it did in the theater surrounded by holiday noise and sky-high expectations. Looking back from 2026, it's also interesting to see how this film fits into a larger wave of late 2000s action reboots that tried, and sometimes failed, to modernize classic properties. Think King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, The Lone Ranger before it, or even some of the early attempts at fantasy franchises. Robin Hood 2018 shares that same DNA: big budget, stylized action, intentional tonal mashups, and a willingness to alienate purists in pursuit of something that feels current. It didn't crack the formula the way some later projects did, but it swung hard, and there's something admirable in that. In an era now dominated by safer, algorithm-friendly streaming originals and multiverse blockbusters, a movie that dared to be this visually and tonally weird almost feels retroactively rebellious itself. It bombed, sure, but it didn't play it safe. And for a certain kind of viewer who loves messy ambition over polished perfection, that's exactly why it still has legs on late-night streaming queues. So if you've made it this far in the ramble, you're probably either already sold or at least morbidly curious. And that's a win. Next time the scroll lands on Robin Hood 2018, don't skip past it. Give it the benefit of no preconceptions, crank the volume on those arrow volleys, enjoy Taron and Jamie bouncing off each other, soak in the visual flair, and let the underdog energy do its thing. It's not flawless, it's not traditional, but it's got a pulse, a point of view, and enough pure cinematic adrenaline to make the 2 hours disappear in the best way. Legends evolve, stories get retold, and this version is proof that sometimes the bold misfire is more memorable than the safe hit. Let's push this Robin Hood 2018 exploration even further, because the truth is, the more time passes since its release, the more interesting it becomes as a time capsule of a very specific moment in blockbuster filmmaking. Late 2000s Hollywood, trying desperately to reinvent dusty IPs while competing with the Marvel machine, streaming wars heating up, and audiences starting to crave something that felt dangerous, or at least unpredictable, instead of another polished franchise entry. We've already dissected the rapid-fire archery that Lars Anderson drilled into Taron Egerton until he could practically shoot like a video game character brought to life. The quiet frustrations Taron later voiced about how reshoots and executive meddling turned his passion project into something less pure, Jamie Foxx's real-world push to ground Yahya in historical resonance rather than caricature, Otto Bathurst's almost defiant refusal to reference any earlier Robin Hood movies so he could chase a vision that was equal parts Peaky Blinders grit and modern heist movie adrenaline, and the way the film's unapologetic anachronisms, everything from tactical streetwear armor to dialogue cadences that feel ripped from a 2018 action trailer, created a love it or hate it divide that still sparks debates online today. Now let's linger a little longer on the things that quietly make this version linger in the memory long after the credits roll. The way it handles the idea of legacy and myth-making, some under-the-radar technical wins that get overshadowed by the louder criticisms, and how certain character beats and visual motifs give it a surprising amount of rewatch value for anyone willing to meet it on its own terms. One of the smartest undercurrents running through the entire film is this meta layer about how legends are born, not through destiny or magic, but through a messy collision of personal trauma, moral awakening, strategic alliances, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept the status quo. Robin doesn't start as the hooded icon we all know. He begins as a somewhat entitled, war-scarred noble who has to be dragged kicking and screaming into seeing the bigger picture, and that slow burn of realization gives his arc real stakes. The movie never rushes the transformation. Instead, it lets moments of quiet observation do the heavy lifting. A lingering look at starving families, a tense exchange in the shadows of Nottingham's underbelly, the growing weight of responsibility when people start looking to him not as a rich kid playing hero, but as someone who might actually change things. It's a classic hero's journey template, sure, but the execution feels personal because Otto Bathurst and the writers leaned into the idea that real change starts small, ugly, and uncertain before it snowballs into something mythic. That gives the later large-scale sequences a payoff that feels earned rather than manufactured, even if the path there is bumpy and deliberately stylized. Technically, there are pockets of craftsmanship that deserve more credit than they usually get. Take the sound mix. Beyond the obvious bow twangs and sword clashes, the film layers in a lot of subtle environmental audio. Distant crowd murmurs in the city, wind through the forest canopy, the low rumble of carts on stone. That creates immersion without drawing attention to itself. When silence hits during tense standoffs or stealth approaches, it lands like a punch because the movie has trained your ears to notice the absence of noise. Joseph Trapanese's score plays a similar game. It knows when to drop out entirely and let natural sounds carry a scene, then slams back in with those hybrid orchestral electronic surges that feel custom-built for the adrenaline spikes. The editing rhythm by Chris Barwell also deserves a nod. It's fast without being frantic, giving breathing room to character exchanges while accelerating through the action so the 116 minutes never drag. Even the color grading holds up. Those early Crusade sequences have a harsh, almost desaturated bleach that makes home feel alien by comparison, and as the story shifts to England, the palette warms slightly but never fully, keeping that sense of a world still under siege. Little choices like these add up to a film that, on a big screen or a good home setup, feels more cinematic than its reputation suggests. Character dynamics outside the main duo also carry surprising weight on repeat viewings. Eve Hewson's Marion isn't written as the typical love interest who exists to be saved or to soften the hero. She's actively plotting, gathering intel, risking exposure in ways that make her an equal partner in the uprising. Her scenes with Robin have real tension because there's history, unspoken hurt, and mutual respect rather than instant romance. Ben Mendelsohn's sheriff isn't a mustache-twirling baddie. He's a cold, calculating opportunist who believes his cruelty is necessary order, and that conviction makes him scarier than a cartoon villain ever could. Tim Minchin's Friar Tuck brings levity without undercutting the stakes. He's the guy who sees the absurdity of it all but still shows up because he believes in the cause. These supporting turns aren't flashy, but they flesh out the world so the rebellion never feels like just two guys against the system. It feels like a fragile coalition that could fall apart at any moment, which amps up the stakes in ways that pure spectacle never could. From a 2026 perspective, watching Robin Hood 2018 now feels almost nostalgic in a strange way. It came out right before the pandemic shifted everything towards safer bets and algorithm-pleasing content, and it represents a last gasp of the big studio gamble. $100 million on a non-superhero, non-franchise reboot that dared to be visually weird, tonally inconsistent, and thematically pointed about wealth hoarding and systemic corruption. It didn't work commercially, and it didn't win over the critical establishment, but it left a fingerprint. You can see echoes of its fast-cut action and stylized medieval punk aesthetic in later projects that tried similar reinventions, even if they played it safer. For anyone who grew up on 90s and 2000s action reboots that swung big and sometimes missed, this film scratches the same itch: messy ambition over calculated perfection. So, if you're still on the fence, do yourself a favor. Treat this as a fun, flawed midnight movie experiment rather than a definitive Robin Hood. Embrace the chaos, cheer the archery acrobatics, root for the underdogs, laugh at the wild anachronisms, and let the sheer energy carry you. It's not going to rewrite cinema history, but it might just remind you why we still love stories about hooded figures who steal from the powerful and give hope to the rest of us. Legends don't have to be perfect. They just have to keep inspiring. We're diving even deeper into the wild, underrated world of Robin Hood 2018, because let's face it, this movie has layers upon layers that keep unfolding the more you think about it, especially in a post-2026 lens where we've seen so many reboots come and go, and this one stands out for its sheer audacity to flip the script on a centuries-old tale without looking back. We've already explored the groundbreaking archery techniques that Lars Anderson brought to the table, turning Taron Egerton's Robin into a whirlwind of precision and speed that feels like watching a masterclass in ancient combat meets modern stunt wizardry. The candid admissions from Taron about how the film's direction shifted under studio influences and reshoots that diluted some of the original spark he signed up for. Jamie Foxx's dedicated effort to infuse Yahya with authentic Moorish historical vibes that add a rich cultural backbone to the mentorship dynamic. Otto Bathurst's bold strategy of ignoring every single prior adaptation to craft something that pulses with contemporary urgency rather than nostalgic reverence. And the film's fearless embrace of anachronisms that blend medieval grit with tactical, almost cyberpunk flair in everything from costume designs to dialogue snaps that make it feel alive and kicking rather than a dusty museum piece. Now let's turn our attention to some of the more introspective elements that give this version a surprising philosophical edge, like how it grapples with the cost of heroism in a broken world, a few overlooked Easter eggs and nods to broader pop culture that sneak in for eagle-eyed viewers, and why the ensemble's quieter moments of doubt and camaraderie might be the secret sauce that makes the whole thing stick with you long after the final arrow lands. At its core, this Robin Hood isn't just about flashy heists or bow-flinging battles, though those are plenty thrilling. It's about the heavy price tag that comes with deciding to be the guy who stands up when everyone else is bowing down, and the way the film weaves that in through subtle character beats rather than big monologues is one of its stealthier strengths. Robin starts off as this war-weary noble who's seen too much bloodshed in the Crusades, and his journey back home forces him to confront not just external tyrants, but his own complicity in a system that's rigged from the top, which adds a layer of internal conflict that feels raw and human. You see it in the way he hesitates during early schemes, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes when plans go sideways, or the quiet exchanges with Yahya where they hash out what justice really means in a world where the powerful rewrite the rules to suit themselves. It's not preachy, it's embedded in the action itself. The risks they take aren't just physical but emotional, testing bonds and forcing choices that could shatter everything they've built. That depth makes the triumphs feel hard-won and the setbacks sting, turning what could have been a straightforward adventure into something that lingers, prompting you to think about how real-world rebels and whistleblowers pay similar costs today, all without ever veering into lecture territory. Pop culture nods and Easter eggs are sprinkled throughout in ways that reward fans of genre films, adding a fun meta-dimension without overwhelming the story. For instance, the high-speed carriage chase through narrow streets has echoes of classic action sequences from movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark, or even modern thrillers like Baby Driver, but with a medieval twist that amps up the chaos. Horses thundering, arrows whizzing, carts flipping in slow-motion glory that the VFX team at DNEG polished to perfection. There's that molten metal moment we touched on earlier, which feels like a deliberate wink to Terminator 2's industrial showdown, blending fire and fury in a way that's visually stunning and thematically tied to the idea of forging something new from destruction. Yahya's staff fighting style draws subtle inspiration from martial arts icons like Donnie Yen's work in Ip Man, bringing a fluid, defensive grace that contrasts Robin's aggressive archery bursts. Even the sheriff's cold, manipulative demeanor has shades of classic villains from Star Wars' Imperial officers or Game of Thrones' schemers, making Ben Mendelsohn's performance feel like a loving homage wrapped in fresh menace. These little touches aren't shouted from the rooftops. They're woven in for those who catch them, adding replay value and making the film feel connected to a broader tapestry of heroic tales. The ensemble's quieter dynamics are where the movie really shines in building a sense of fragile unity amid the storm, creating relationships that feel organic and essential rather than just plot devices. Jamie Dornan's Will Scarlet isn't your typical merry man sidekick. He carries this brooding intensity, a mix of loyalty and simmering resentment that hints at deeper personal stakes, making his interactions with Marion and Robin charged with unspoken history. F. Murray, Abraham's cardinal, brings a velvet-gloved authority, his scenes dripping with the kind of ecclesiastical intrigue that elevates the political underbelly without stealing focus from the main conflict. The merry band as a whole, folks like the various outlaws and villagers who gradually join the fray, aren't fleshed out with long backstories, but their presence adds texture. A quick glance of gratitude here, a shared nod of determination there, building a collective spirit that makes the rebellion feel grassroots and real. It's in these interstitial moments, away from the big explosions, that the film's heart beats strongest, reminding you that legends aren't made in isolation. They're forged in the fires of community, trust, and shared sacrifice. Reflecting on its place in film history now, in 2026, Robin Hood 2018 feels like a bridge between the bombastic 2010s blockbusters and the more introspective, character-driven stories we're seeing today, even if it didn't quite nail the landing for everyone. It came out in a year packed with sequels and remakes, Aquaman, Venom, Fantastic Beasts, and tried to carve its niche by being the anti-traditional epic, which is why its mixed reception makes sense. Too modern for history buffs, too historical for pure action junkies. But that's also why it endures. It's a conversation starter, a film that provokes strong opinions and invites debate about what makes a good reboot. On streaming platforms where it lives now, it pops up in underrated action lists or guilty pleasure recommendations, drawing in new viewers who appreciate its fast pace and unpretentious fun over flawless execution. The themes of wealth inequality and standing against corruption hit even harder in hindsight, feeling prescient in a world that's seen economic upheavals and social movements rise and fall since 2018. All that said, if you're gearing up for a movie night and want something that delivers spectacle with a side of substance, Robin Hood 2018 is waiting to surprise you. Arrows flying, schemes unfolding, heroes rising in ways that remind us why these stories keep getting told across generations. It's got the energy to keep you glued, the heart to make you care, and the style to make it memorable, flaws and all. We're pushing this Robin Hood 2018 deep dive into truly uncharted territory now because the longer we talk about it, the more it reveals itself as one of those films that improves with distance and perspective, almost like a fine wine that needed time to breathe after its rocky 2018 debut. We've already covered the revolutionary archery coaching from Lars Anderson that transformed Taron Egerton's performance into something kinetic and almost balletic. The bittersweet honesty Taron shared years later about how the final edit drifted from the vision that originally excited him. Jamie Foxx's personal investment in making Yahya a culturally grounded and narratively essential figure rather than window dressing. Otto Bathurst's almost punk rock decision to treat the entire Robin Hood cinematic canon as non-existent, so he could chase a raw, modern pulse, and the film's fearless commitment to anachronistic flair that turns leather armor into tactical streetwear, dialogue into sharp contemporary rhythms, and medieval battles into something that feels like a high-stakes heist crossed with a superhero awakening. Now let's zoom in on a few more underappreciated facets that give this movie its staying power. The way it subtly explores themes of identity and belonging in a fractured world. Some fascinating production anecdotes that show just how chaotic yet committed the shoot really was, and how certain stylistic choices create a visual language that's uniquely its own, even if it alienated traditionalists at the time. One of the quieter but most compelling threads running through the film is this exploration of identity. Who gets to define themselves when society has already labeled you, and what happens when you refuse those labels and forge something new. Yahya's arc is the clearest example. As a Moorish commander captured and enslaved, stripped of name and agency, he reclaims both through sheer will, skill, and the unlikely partnership he forms with Robin. It's not heavy-handed. It's shown through actions, how he carries himself with quiet dignity amid hostility, how he teaches Robin not just fighting techniques, but a different way of seeing power and resistance, how his presence challenges the insular English world around him without ever needing a soapbox speech. Robin himself wrestles with identity in parallel, the privileged lord who returns from war haunted, the man who once fought for a crown, now questioning everything it stands for, the reluctant hero who has to earn the right to wear the hood rather than inherit it. These identity struggles aren't shouted. They're woven into glances, silences, and small gestures that build over time, giving the larger rebellion a personal heartbeat. When the Outlaws start to coalesce, not as a polished gang, but as a ragtag collection of people who've all been discarded or betrayed by the system, it feels authentic because the film never pretends unity comes easy. Doubt, friction, and hard-won trust are part of the package, and that realism makes the eventual moments of solidarity hit harder than pure wish fulfillment ever could. Production stories from the set paint a picture of controlled chaos that somehow fueled the final energy on screen. The relocation after the Budapest studio fire wasn't just logistical. It forced the team to adapt on the fly, squeezing massive interior sets into the Cité du Cinéma north of Paris while keeping the momentum alive. Actors have shared in old junket interviews how the shoot felt like boot camp. Daily combat drills, archery sessions that left calluses and bruises, nights spent running fight choreography until muscles screamed. Taron described one particularly grueling day where they filmed a major action beat in pouring rain in Croatia. Everyone soaked to the bone, but refusing to call cut because the mood was too perfect. Raw, desperate, alive. Jamie Foxx talked about bonding with the stunt team over shared meals and late-night talks, turning what could have been a grueling job into a brotherhood that mirrored the on-screen one. Even the reshoots in early 2018, often blamed for diluting the vision, had silver linings. Extra time to refine the carriage chase, polish Aeroflight VFX, and tighten emotional beats that might have felt rushed otherwise. The crew's resilience shines through in the finished product. Every frame feels fought for, not phoned in. Visually, the film carves out its own language in ways that feel deliberate and cohesive once you tune into it. George Steele's camera doesn't just capture action, it moves with purpose. Low-angle shots during confrontations to make the sheriff loom larger than life, sweeping tracking shots through crowded streets to convey the scale of oppression, intimate handheld moments in the outlaw camp that feel documentary real amid the spectacle. The color timing plays its own quiet role, desaturated, almost metallic tones in the Crusades to evoke alienation and trauma, then a gradual warming as alliances form and hope flickers, though never fully bright, keeping that sense of a world still teetering on the edge. Costumes follow suit. Robin's evolving look starts practical and armored, then sheds layers as he sheds illusions, ending in the iconic hood that's less ornate cape and more functional shadow. These aren't accidents. They're choices that create a visual grammar unique to this telling, setting it apart from the lush greens of the 1938 classic or the earthy realism of the 2010 version. In 2026, looking back, Robin Hood 2018 feels like a relic from a brief window when studios still occasionally greenlit big swings on non-superhero properties. Risky, uneven, but alive with personality. It didn't redefine the genre or launch a franchise, but it left a mark. Proof that even a failure can spark conversations, inspire fan edits, land on underrated gems lists, and quietly influence how later creators approach legend reinvention. Its themes of corruption, resistance, cross-cultural solidarity, and the messy birth of heroes feel even more resonant now than they did in 2018, giving it a second or third life on streaming shelves where people stumble across it and walk away pleasantly surprised. So if you've been following this marathon breakdown and you're still curious, do the thing. Hit play on Robin Hood 2018. Let the arrows fly, let the chaos unfold, let the underdog energy wash over you. It's not perfect, it's not safe, but it's got soul, spectacle, and a stubborn refusal to be ordinary. Sometimes that's more than enough. We're cranking this Robin Hood 2018 marathon up to legendary levels now because as we sit here in early 2026, this film keeps resurfacing in fresh conversations on streaming lists and fan forums, proving that bold swings like this one, $100 million poured into a reimagining that grossed just $86.5 million worldwide, with $30.8 million from the US and Canada alone, don't fade away. They simmer, waiting for viewers ready to embrace their quirks and uncover the gems buried under the initial backlash. We've delved into Lars Anderson's game-changing archery mentorship that had Taron Egerton firing off arrows at blistering speeds using that ancient thumb draw method where the arrow doesn't cross the bow, mimicking real historical techniques while amping up the cinematic flair to superhero levels. Taron's raw 2019 Variety confessions about the committee-made final product that strayed from the gritty vision he signed onto post-Kingsman, leaving him not very happy on set amid those infamous reshoots. Jamie Foxx's on-set advocacy to evolve his Yahya from a generic Little John into a Moorish tactician with deep cultural roots inspired by actual Crusades-era interactions, and Otto Bathurst's punk ethos of blank-slating the entire Robin Hood legacy, no peeking at Errol Flynn's swashbuckling 1938 classic, Kevin Costner's romantic 1991 Prince of Thieves that borrowed heavily here in spirit, or Russell Crowe's dour 2010 Origins tale, to birth something he called a militarized anarchist revolutionary, a freedom fighter whose 800-year legend stems not from petty theft, but from sparking outright revolt against systemic greed. Now, let's unpack the full sprawling cast and crew tapestry that fleshes out this world. drawing from those exhaustive IMDb credits and Letterboxd deep dives, because every minor player, from the Crusader Morants to the Muttons, adds grit to Nottingham's underbelly, making the rebellion feel like a powder keg of real faces and fates, rather than faceless extras. Start with the production heavyweights beyond the headliners. This was a Summit Entertainment and Lionsgate joint, exec produced by Joby Harold, who originated the story back in 2015 after his work on Guy Ritchie's chaotic King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, with Leonardo DiCaprio's Appian Way injecting that social justice edge he loves from his docs like Before the Flood. Jennifer Davison Killeran helmed production alongside Safehouse Pictures' Howard Ellis and Thunder Road's Basil Iwanek, ensuring the scope matched the ambition. Filming wrapped principal photography February 20th to May 19th, 2017 across Dubrovnik's Game of Thrones. Famous walls for Nottingham's imposing stone fortresses, Hungary's vast plains for battlefield sprawl, France's Laurency forests for shadowy Sherwood vibes, and even a pivot to Paris's Cité du Cinéma after that freak fire torched Budapest sets mid-shoot. The full cast roster is a who's who of rising talents and vets. Taron as the core Robin of Locksley, Jamie Foxx commanding as Yahya/John, Ben Mendelsohn sneering as the sheriff, Eve Hewson owning Marion with her Bono daughter Fire from Bridge of Spies, Jamie Dornan brooding as Will Scarlet fresh off 50 Shades and The Fall, Tim Minchin quipping as Friar Tuck channeling his Matilda musical wit, Paul Anderson menacing as Guy of Gisborne straight from Peaky Blinders' Arthur Shelby brutality, F. Murray Abraham's Oscar-winning Amadeus Gravitas as the scheming cardinal. Then the texture builders, Ian Peck as the oily archdeacon, Cornelius Booth as Lord Pembroke, Kane Headley Cummings adding muscle, Scott Greenan in the mix, Lara Rossi, Kevin Griffiths, Katrina Temple, Bjorn Bengtsson, Matt DeVere, Nicholas Whitman doubling as Crusader Morant, that's the full credit nod, Yasin Atur, billed as Yasin Zaytiz Atur in some spots, as the steadfast Mutton, Josh Herdman channeling his Harry Potter crab energy as Righteous, Jerome Holder as Teenage Moore, Kembe Sorrell L., Jonathan Peck, Laszlo Aaron, Declan Hannigan, Antonio Lujak as Baron's Guard, Andrea Mladenic, Franny Perishin, Roderick Hill, Jeremy V. Gouraud, and more unnamed guards and villagers who populate the 116-minute, sometimes listed as 104 or 118 in reviews, PG-13 runtime packed with Dolby Atmos sound design by Steve Single, Jan Sewell's makeup turning faces battle-ravaged, and Chris Barwell's editing slicing 200-plus hours into non-stop rhythm. Crew-wise, it's stacked. Julian Day's costumes, over 500 pieces blending functional leather with that punk medieval hybrid, earning nods from his later Bohemian Rhapsody triumph, make every fight move like a second skin. Jean-Vincent Puzo's designed the oppressive Nottingham anew, from ramshackle markets to molten-forged hellscapes echoing Terminator 2. George Steele's Ari Alexa scope, 2.35:1 cinematography, honed on Peaky Blinders, delivers those low-angle sheriff looms and rain-lashed Croatian downpours. Joseph Trapanese's score, with its ex-ambassadors tie-in The Devil You Know for Credits Rebellion, fuses strings, synths, and percussion for Yahya's tribal pulse. DNEGVFX seamlessly blends practical horse charges, 100-plus beasts, with arrow barrages. Extras on Blu-ray and digital drops, like the 7-part making-of suite covering casting, taking aim, action, and training, with Lars Anderson footage of Taron hitting airborne targets mid-jump. Nottingham anew, design, donning the hood, costumes, Rockin' Robin, music, and seeing the forest for the trees the future. Reveal Otto's sequel teases, though Lionsgate's write-down killed that dream after holiday clashes with Ralph Breaks, The Internet, and Creed 2. Fan reception in 2026? It's bubbling as a cult guilty pleasure. Letterboxd logs praise the Arrow CW vibes and Batman as Robin origin. Reddit threads debate its 5.4 out of 10 IMDb from 108,000 votes against RT's 14% critics/39% audience. Common Sense Media notes kids digging the action despite plot gripes. Streaming on AMC+, Fandango at home rentals, MGM+ pushes. Instagram Reels hype it as next big hit amid confusion with TV series. Netflix in spots till region locks. It's resurfacing in underrated action cues. Recent X chatter since 2024 spikes on Taron's Rocketman glow-up, contrasting this flop, Jamie's enduring charm, Otto's TV jump. Roger Ebert's two-star Matt Zoller Sights pegged it as capturing Legend's heart but fumbling translation. Variety's Owen Gleiberman called it a retrofit for kids with boy band Robin and Bullet Force arrows. Hollywood Reporter noted fresh youth idol cast but misguided mod. Yet talks at Google panels with cast hyped 110 years post-first 1908 silent Robin Hood, AMC junkets boasted action no one's seen, and behind-scenes YouTube from Hollywood.com shows Taron, Jamie, Dornan, Mendelsohn goofing amid rain-soaked Dubrovnik takes. Minor roles shine too. Josh Herdman's Righteous adds righteous fury. Yas Natur's Mutton brings loyalty. Jerome Holder's Teenage Moor echoes Yahya's legacy. Otto and THR. You don't need an iron suit to make a difference, positioning Robin as truth-seeker amid Trump-era parallels some scribes drew. Taron and Telegraph on dieting post-Kingsman for lean agility. Phobia kept horse-free. This film's chaos, rain delays, fire pivots, committee cuts mirrors its rebel soul, flawed yet fierce. We're officially in ultra-marathon territory with this Robin Hood 2018 breakdown now, and honestly, that's fitting for a movie whose whole spirit is about endurance. Pushing through impossible odds, refusing to quit even when the deck is stacked, and turning setbacks into fuel for something bigger. We've already mapped out the Lars Anderson archery revolution that let Taron Egerton loose those blistering thumb-draw volleys, 3 arrows in under a second mid-leap, hitting airborne targets like it's nothing. Taron's candid post-release reflections on the made-by-committee frustration that left him feeling the final cut lost some of the raw edge he fought for during those grueling reshoots. Jamie Foxx's behind-the-scenes push to make Yahya a fully fleshed Moorish warrior mentor drawing from real Crusades-era cross-cultural encounters rather than a sidekick stereotype. Otto Bathurst's almost rebellious choice to treat every previous Robin Hood film as invisible so he could chase a vision he described as militarized anarchist revolutionary with modern heist energy and no nostalgic baggage. And the film's unapologetic stylistic mashup. Tactical leather armor that looks street-ready, dialogue rhythms that snap like contemporary banter, battles choreographed like John Wick and Chainmail, that turned a 14th century folk legend into something that feels ripped from 2018 headlines about wealth gaps and power abuse. Now let's widen the lens a bit more to the film's place in the bigger cinematic conversation of its era, some overlooked technical and artistic wins that quietly elevated. The way certain visual and sound motifs create a cohesive identity even amid the chaos, and why, in February 2026, this so-called flop keeps quietly resurfacing as a cult favorite for people who crave ambition over perfection. Think about the late 2000s context for a second. This was peak reboot fatigue season. Marvel was dominating with interconnected universes, DC was stumbling through its own Snyder-cut drama, and studios were throwing money at every IP they could dust off. King Arthur. Legend of the Sword had just bombed trying a similar stylized medieval reinvention. The Lone Ranger had been a cautionary tale years earlier, and even bigger swings like Mortal Engines were about to crash. Robin Hood 2018 arrived in that exact window as one of the last big studio bets on a standalone, non-franchise action epic that wasn't tied to capes or sequels. It carried the weight of proving that classic legends could still be reinvented with fresh eyes rather than safe nostalgia plays. Otto Bathurst leaned into that pressure, telling interviewers he wanted to make a film that felt dangerous and relevant in a time when inequality was headline news every day, tax havens, corporate greed, endless foreign wars draining resources while people at home struggled. The result is a movie that, flaws and all, has a point of view. Heroes aren't born from destiny, they're made when ordinary or privileged people decide the system is broken and start breaking it back. That conviction gives the film an undercurrent of urgency that survives the tonal whiplash and script inconsistencies. On the craft side, there are pockets of excellence that get buried under the louder criticisms. The practical stunt work is one. Over 100 trained horses thundering through Croatian streets and French forests. Real archery performed on camera. No green screen bow pulls for the close-ups. Parkour-infused rooftop runs that Taron and Doubles executed with bruising commitment. The carriage chase, flipping carts, leaping riders, arrows pinning wheels, is a masterclass in blending practical vehicles with targeted VFX, giving it weight and danger that pure CGI rarely achieves. Sound design by Steve Single layers everything meticulously. The metallic twang of bowstrings cutting through wind, the muffled thud of arrows into wood, the low rumble of crowds simmering with unrest in Nottingham's lower districts. Those ambient details build immersion without fanfare. Joseph Trapanese's score deserves equal praise. Its hybrid pulse, orchestral heroism crashing into electronic grit, and tribal percussion for Yahya's themes, mirrors the film's cultural fusion and keeps energy surging even in quieter scenes. When the music drops out entirely during stealth approaches or tense confrontations, the silence hits like a weapon. Visually, George Steele's cinematography carves a distinct identity. Harsh, sun-scorched yellows and oranges in the Crusades sequences to evoke alienation and trauma. Then cooler grays and muted earth tones back in England that slowly warm with torchlight and hope as the rebellion grows. Never fully bright, always shadowed, reflecting a world still under threat. Camera movement is purposeful, sweeping Steadicam through crowded markets to show scale and oppression. Low-angle Dutch tilts when the sheriff looms. Intimate handheld in the outlaw camp for raw connection. Costumes by Julian Day evolve with the characters. Robin sheds heavy armor as he sheds illusions, ending in the stripped-down hood that's more shadow than symbol. Production design by Jean-Vincent Puizos makes Nottingham feel oppressive, yet lived in. Ramshackle lower levels teeming with desperate life, opulent upper halls dripping with excess, underground forges glowing with molten threat. These elements cohere into a visual grammar that's unmistakably this film's not a generic medieval template. In 2026 hindsight, Robin Hood 2018 feels like a bridge to where we're at now. Streaming-first originals, algorithm-safe content, but also a growing appetite for messy, authorial swings. It didn't launch a franchise or redefine the genre, but it quietly influenced how some creators think about legend reinvention. Take risks, embrace the weird, let themes speak without apology. On platforms like Letterboxd and Reddit, it's gaining underrated gem status. People discovering it late, expecting trash, and walking away charmed by the energy, the cast chemistry, the sheer nerve. It's become a midnight movie pick, a turn your brain off and enjoy the arrows recommendation, a conversation starter about what reboots owe their source material. So if this endless ramble has you even mildly intrigued, do the simple thing. Cue it up tonight. Dim the lights, crank the volume on those bow shots, let Taron and Jamie's banter carry you, cheer the underdogs, laugh at the wild choices, feel the rebel pulse. It's not flawless cinema, but it's alive, ambitious, and unashamedly itself. Sometimes that's the most heroic thing a movie can be. The one-third design rule is one of those production secrets that explains so much about why the movie looks and feels the way it does. Nottingham's streets mix genuine medieval stonework with sleek modern lines and almost sci-fi metallic accents. The costumes blend functional leather armor that could pass for historical, with tactical streetwear cuts and futuristic detailing that makes Robin's hood look like high-tech camouflage rather than a quaint cloth cape. Julian Day's wardrobe team built over 500 pieces under that guideline, so when you see characters moving through fights or crowds, nothing feels generic or pulled from a costume shop. It all contributes to this heightened, alternate universe Nottingham that feels both timeless and urgent. Production designer Jean-Vincent Puizos took the same approach with the sets. The lower districts teem with lived-in chaos that's part authentic ramshackle, part gritty contemporary underbelly, part dystopian future oppression, while the sheriff's castle interiors drip with opulent excess that mixes historical tapestries, modern lighting schemes, and futuristic throne elements. George Steele's cinematography leans into it too, harsh, desaturated Crusades footage giving way to cooler, shadowed English tones that gradually warm with rebellion torchlight, creating a visual arc that mirrors the story's emotional journey without ever needing to explain itself. These choices weren't accidents. They were the director's way of saying this isn't your grandfather's Robin Hood, and they give the film a cohesive identity that rewards paying attention on repeat watches. More trivia that keeps surfacing in interviews and featurettes. The Moorish ally wasn't part of the original Robin Hood ballads at all. It was invented for the 1980s UK TV show Robin of Sherwood, and Kevin Costner's 1991 film basically borrowed it thinking it was canon, which is why Jamie Foxx's Yahya feels both fresh and rooted in a modern reinterpretation tradition. That history makes his performance even more layered. He's not just a buddy cop in chainmail, he's carrying forward an evolving legend that scholars now consider almost entirely apocryphal anyway, so the film leans into the myth-making rather than pretending to be history. On set, the cast bonded over the physical grind. Daily archery drills that left real calluses, combat training that turned bruises into badges of honor, and late-night talks that turned colleagues into the kind of crew that mirrored the on-screen outlaws. Eve Hewson brought her own fire to Marion, making her an active schemer and equal partner rather than a waiting love interest, drawing from strong women in history who influenced events from the shadows. Tim Minchin infused Friar Tuck with musical comedy timing that slips in rhythmic delivery even in serious moments, lightening the load without undercutting stakes. Paul Anderson's Guy of Gisborne channels that Peaky Blinders menace into a loyal but ruthless enforcer who feels like a mirror to the heroes, ambitious, dangerous, but ultimately on the wrong side. F. Murray Abraham's Cardinal adds velvet-smooth authority in just a handful of scenes, elevating the political intrigue with decades of theatrical gravitas. Even the smaller roles, like Josh Herdman's Righteous bringing quiet fury, Yasin Atour's Mutton as steadfast loyalty, Jerome Holder's Teenage Moor hinting at legacy, or Nicholas Whitman's Crusader Morant adding battlefield texture, populate the world so densely that the uprising feels organic, a groundswell of discarded people deciding enough is enough. The home video extras, still available on Blu-ray and digital in 2026, are packed with gold. 7 featurettes covering casting, action training with Lars Anderson footage of Taron nailing those impossible shots, design breakdowns explaining the 1/3 rule in detail, costume evolution, music scoring sessions with Joseph Trapanese fusing orchestral swells and electronic pulses, and director commentary where Otto talks about wanting Robin to prove you don't need an iron suit to make a difference. No full director's cut ever dropped, but those extras reveal the passion that survived the reshoots, the rain-soaked Croatian delays, the Budapest fire relocation to Paris studios, everything that turned potential disaster into a film that feels fought for and alive. Box office-wise, it landed as one of 2018's bigger disappointments against that $100 million budget, opening to $9.2 million domestically in a crowded Thanksgiving slot and finishing at $86.5 million worldwide. But its 5.4 IMDb score from over 100,000 votes and cult status on Letterboxd and Reddit show it's finding its people, folks who love the Arrow acrobatics, the Taron Jamie banter, the rebel spirit, and the sheer nerve of a movie that dared to be weird in an era of safe bets. In early 2026, with Taron riding high off his Rocketman legacy and Jamie still lighting up screens, this Robin Hood feels like a fascinating snapshot of what could have been. A potential franchise starter that got derailed but left behind a movie that's endlessly rewatchable for the right crowd. It's the kind of film that grows on you. First watch you might laugh at the wild choices, second watch you appreciate the craft, third watch you realize the themes of resistance, identity, and found family hit harder than expected. So, if this marathon has you even a little bit tempted, do it. Fire up Robin Hood 2018 tonight. Embrace the stylized chaos, cheer every arrow volley, feel the underdog fire, and let it remind you why legends keep getting reborn. It's got heart, spectacle, and a stubborn outlaw soul that refuses to die quietly.